right now. ESPN draft analyst Jonathan Givony here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Jonathan, welcome. How are you?
Doing great. How about you?
We're all good. We're in an interesting spot here with Philadelphia. Normally, we're all used to being in the top 3 of the draft. Being 10 is kind of an unfamiliar territory over the last couple of years. But let me ask you this. In this situation right now where Philadelphia is, if you have number 10, is that an attractive spot to trade?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, this is the loaded draft, and 10 is going to get you a pretty good player. And I know that there's a lot of interest around the NBA in this pick, and there's a sense that Philly is in win now mode right now. And so if they're able to get a player, a wing especially, that can really come in and make an impact for them next year, I think that they'll have to look at that pretty strongly, especially considering the build up to this draft and losing your GM and all that. Your head coach is now the decision maker, along with Mark Eversley. So, I got to think that, getting a veteran could be really attractive, but I don't think they're going to sell it for pennies on the dollar either, because there are some players at 10 that could potentially help them right now as well.
Yeah, I know 10's an interesting spot for them. We'll throw out a couple of names that are interesting, at least to me anyway. We'll see what you think about him. If you're at number 10, Kevin Knox, he's the guy that I like a lot. I really like him from about the last 3-4 weeks. I know the Sixers are bringing him in for a second workout. If he's on the board at number 10, is that an attractive pick for you?
Not really, to be honest with you. I like Kevin Knox's talent quite a bit, and I could see him even going ahead of them, even as high as 7 or to Chicago, or 9 to New York. But him being 18 years old, 6'9", playing essentially the same position as Rob Covington, who you just committed a huge amount of money to, and Ben Simmons, we saw him guarding quite a few power forwards over the course of the season. So I'm just not sure where Knox fits into that. To me, I think you're probably going to want to look at more of a true wing, someone who can guard 2s and 3s, and that's where everybody just kind of assumes they're going to take Mikal Bridges if they keep that pick, and if he's there, and because of all the connections there between Villanova and Philadelphia, and also how great of a fit he is. I mean, he's turning 22 years old. He just won a national championship. He's a tremendous shooter. He's got a 7'2" wingspan. He can guard multiple positions. He knows how to play. He's a high character guy. His mom works for the Sixers. So there's a lot going there between Bridges and the Sixers.
Yeah, there sure is. His name has been mentioned a heck of a lot around here, as is Miles Bridges as well. And Wendell Carter's another name that's kind of in that area. Michael Porter's name comes around. What is a best case scenario that falls to number 10?
Potentially one of the guards, maybe. The one that kind of stands out to me as being intriguing for Philly is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, just because he's 6'6", has a 7-foot wingspan. He can guard 1, 2s, and 3s. He's not great, but decent shooter with his feet set. He's improving in that area. He's got a great feel for the game. I think, Ben Simmons showed at times that he could use another ball handler alongside him, someone with a good basketball IQ that can, especially when he's not on the floor, to help him. And that guy should be Markelle Fultz, but we didn't see that. We didn't see that materialize in the playoffs. And so there's a lot of question marks there about how that's going to play out. But, Mikal Bridges, he just seems like a perfect fit there.
Jonathan Givony, ESPN draft expert here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. All right, let's go up to the top of this draft here. Are you locked in on Ayton as the number 1 guy?
I'm locked in on him going there at number 1 for sure. That's, all the indications I'm receiving is that he will be the pick, and he's been informed of such.
When you look at the top half of this draft, you got this big guy. You got a lot of bigs. Is there a big potential for bust in this particular draft with the way that the league is going, or are these bigs guys are going to step out and do what a lot of the league is doing now?
I think both is accurate. I think there definitely is some bust potential with some of the bigs at the top. There's bust potential with anybody. Like any draft, there's no scenario where in a draft every guy pans out,
sure,
in the top 5. There's always 1 or 2 guys that don't, that end up being, just average players. And so I think you're going to see that happen this year as well. But, these bigs are different than your traditional bigs because they're versatile. I mean, most of them can step out. They can shoot a three-pointer. They can pass the ball. They can switch. They rebound. They do enough things to be fits in the modern game, especially if you're talking about, DeAndre Ayton at the top. And so I think those are the type of bigs you're going to see coming into the NBA more and more. And, there's some question marks, among teams about, is it a chicken before the egg type deal where the reason why teams don't play bigs is because they don't have the right bigs, or is it just because that big men are becoming extinct altogether? And so maybe if they did have the right type of big men, for example, like Boston did, we saw in the Philadelphia series, playing Al Horford and Aaron Baines together, they made that work. And that was tough for opposing teams to handle. And so, it's an ongoing conversation that we're having. I don't think we know the answer to it. The league is cyclical and things in a year or two, we could be talking again about, you need a 7-footer, size. You can't teach size, and 7-footers don't grow on trees. I mean, I doubt it, but I wouldn't. I mean, the small ball movement is fairly new.
It is, and you got a lot of teams trying to emulate what the Warriors do, and it's like, I don't know that you can out-Warriors the Warriors until you just do something completely different with that difference-making type of player. I don't know that guy exists. Who is your number one player?
I would take Luka Doncic. I just love his fit in today's game as a 6'8" point guard, 230 pounds, a guy that can play pick and roll, that can handle it, that can make every pass in the book, who can shoot off the dribble, who is a guy that wants the ball in the last 2 minutes of the game, that's made clutch play after clutch play and every level he's played at. I mean, he just gets better at the end of games, whereas you're seeing, as we talked about in the playoffs, a lot of big men, even Clint Capella, can't play the last 6 minutes of a crucial game. And so give me Luka Doncic, who you can play him at the 1, 2, 3, or 4. He rebounds. He's a better defender than he gives credit for, and the dude's a winner. I mean, he just he loves it, and he's 19 years old. I don't see any reason why he's not going to continue to improve at the same time.
Where do you stand on Michael Porter?
I'm a little bit skeptical about. I mean, the medical situation is obviously concerning, and I don't know. I think people are overselling how good of a player he was even before the injury to an extent. There were definitely question marks about him. I distinctly remember in August going to the Adidas Nations camp in Houston. He played there against guys like Mikal Bridges, Dante DiVincenzo, Robert Williams, Bruce Brown. I mean, a big part of the first round was playing there, and he really, really struggled with his efficiency. He has a very high handle. He's very upright in his stance, and his shot selection leaves a lot to be desired. He's an ISO guy. He wants to dribble and shoot pull-ups. And so people are saying, well, if he was, the medicals were checked out, he'd be the number one pick, no question. And so we got to take him in the top 5. And I'm just not sure if, had he stayed healthy and, played the whole year at Missouri, if we're having the same conversation.
Yeah, I scratched my head with him. I don't know what to think about Michael Porter with the injuries, and then I've heard some things that he's a little selfish at times, not the most coachable guy, but he's going to be a wild card, right? He'll be the wild card. I mean, he can go anywhere from 2 to 15.
He's the wild card for sure. Doncic is a little bit of a wild card, but I think he's going to get picked in the top 5 still. And then the guards, it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out with Trae Young, Colin Sexton, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Yeah.
Trae Young could go as high as 3. He could go as low as 12. And so that's a wide range still, 2 days before the draft. We're not sure how that's going to play out. Who's going to be the first point guard drafted? Where do they come off the board? And what does that do for some of these other younger guys, like a Kevin Knox, like a Lonnie Walker? Where is Miles Bridges in this draft? I mean, he's kind of the forgotten man at this point. And so it's going to be a really, really fun draft. It's one of the most fun ones that I've been doing this for 15 years now, maybe the most fun one that I've covered, and so I can't wait to see how that all plays out.
Jonathan Givony's with us. I know the Sixers have 26. And real quick, are there guys at the bottom? Like I talked about in the top 10, you got a lot of guys that you might be taking ceiling guys. Do you think there's some depth that if you're hanging around the teens and in the 20s that you got guys? Are there guys that you like at the back end of this first round?
Oh, there are a ton of guys that I like. This is a very deep draft. There are a number of players who we thought were going to go back to school that would have been top 20 draft picks next year that ultimately ended up staying in the draft. And then you had a bunch of guys who were big-time risers throughout the process, guys like Jerome Robinson from Boston College, like Aaron Holiday from UCLA, like Kevin Herter from Maryland, and, Josh Okogie from Georgia Tech. All these guys had very strong pre-draft processes. They're all in the first round now. And so it pushes guys down to the back of the first round and also even into the second round, up to around 40 or 45. I think there's a lot of quality to be had there. And so, but the big question mark if you're the Sixers is how many rookies can you have on your roster next year? I mean, Brett Brown is not, the process is over, it's time to start winning games. And so, they have 6 picks. It wouldn't shock me if they traded 5 of those picks, or if they decided at 26 to take a guy like Janan Musa, for example, or an Elia Kobo. These are really, really talented European players who are under contract for next year, and you can continue to stash them, let them develop on somebody else's time. And when they're, like we're seeing that the Sixers are going to do with Jonah Bolden, for example. He had a good year in Maccabi Tel Aviv. He's coming over next year. He's much more ready to help a team now after a year in the EuroLeague than he was a season ago coming out of the Serbian League. So that's, I think, something to keep an eye on. Is Musa there? Is Okobo there? And are they, their willingness to be stashed? Because these guys want to come over right away. They're not trying to stay in Croatia or France. They want to play in the NBA. And so how does that all play out? And I could see the Sixers punting on that 26th pick and maybe getting a 2019 first rounder. Wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for them. Just continuing to stockpile assets. If you're going to be aggressive, you're going to try and get Kawhi Leonard, you need to have assets to throw at the Spurs. And so, that's how I see it playing out.
John, there's so many intriguing names in this. I know we're running short on time here. You got the 3 Villanova kids. You got DiVincenzo, Spellman. You got Brunson. You've got great college players like Grayson Allen and Javon Carter that are going to be, the 4-year players that sometimes get passed over. So should be a fun night. If there's a guy in the second round, the Sixers have 4 picks. If they walked away with a guy in the second round, give me a second-round name that you say they should walk away with.
Well, Rodion Kurucs is a guy to keep an eye on. People are saying that his floor might be 39 to Philly. We're also hearing a little bit of Isuf Sanin. He's a Ukrainian guard with African roots who is extremely athletic. He's got a great body, had a terrific showing at the NBA Global Camp in Treviso a few weeks ago. Mark Eversley was there sitting front and center watching that. And so you really think that if the Sixers keep those picks, they're going to have to take European players that don't need to be on the roster next year. And so those are 2 guys to keep an eye on. And then as the draft moves on, they're going to be talking to agents and saying, who wants to take a 2-way contract? Who is going to be the 16th and 17th player on our roster next year, play all of next season in the G League? And that's where, if they do keep those picks, those are the type of guys I can see them targeting because, like we said, they only have 1 or 2 roster spots. They're going to go get veterans and they're making a run next year. They're not trying to mess around with, mid to late second-round picks on their roster.
Jonathan Givony, ESPN NBA draft analyst, and you can follow him on Twitter at Draft Express. He was kind enough to jump on board the NBA draft Thursday night right here on 97.3 ESPN. Jonathan, thank you so much, man.
Thanks for having me.